Welcome to an excerpt from Jihad and the West, Black Flag over Babylon, written by Mark Selinsky, with a foreword by Sebastian Gorka. It was published by Indiana University Press, Bloomington and Indianapolis. This reading is presented by Kensington Security Consulting, which brings education to national security. This excerpt comes from Chapter 1 and begins with the American experience with the Barbary pirates. America went to war against North African Muslim potentates, specifically the Barbary pirates of Morocco, in Tunis, Algiers, and Tripoli. The Muslim rulers demanded tribute, or jizya, because the Quran required it of infidels. Instead, in 1815, James Madison used the navy to defeat the Barbary sheikhs at sea and on the shores of Tripoli. Later, Americans would come as missionaries and merchants. In the middle of the 19th century, an American Protestant missionary described Mosul as a prosperous trading town, characterized by a diverse religious and ethnic composition. He described Orthodox and Catholic Christians living next to Sunni Muslims, Jews, Kurds, Turkmen, and Yazidis. According to the missionary, you will scarcely find a lad in his teens who doesn't use at least 2 tongues. And to travel 100 miles from Mosul, 4 are necessary. In the 20th century, Muslims and Christians would be, at different times, both enemies and allies. The British-Arabian partnership against the Ottomans was made world famous by the exploits of Lawrence of Arabia. British General Allenby would conquer Jerusalem in 1917, which would mark the first time since the Crusades that a Western force dictated terms of surrender to an Islamic force in that holy city. In the wake of the Great War, Colonial Secretary Winston Churchill assembled a band of politicians and scholars, whom he called the 40 Thieves. The only woman thief of this 1921 conference was Gertrude Bell, diplomat, scholar, and spy, who is cited as the midwife for the birth of the Iraqi state. She loved Iraq, and many Iraqis returned that affection. Some tended to her gravesite for years. A California professor ventured, in mid-2016, Bell would be dismayed to see the museum she founded sacked and looted, or the damage ISIL inflicted upon the ancient site of Hatra in Iraq, which she visited in 1911. But she would be even more distraught to see the devastation it wrought on Iraq's human heritage, particularly the Yazidis. There are disputed accounts of political maneuvering in the post-World War I Middle East. Lawrence, calling himself the chief crook of our gang, wept at what he saw as the British betrayal of agreements, particularly those made to the Arabian king Hussein. Today, leaders of the Caliphate rail against the post-war division of Mesopotamia, but objective scholarship is more sympathetic toward the West. Historians note that the Ottomans had ruled Syria, Baghdad, Basra, Mosul, and other cities as distinct political units. Furthermore, the Western presence promoted sustained human development in the area. Some Westerners sought to exploit the region's oil wealth, but others valued it for its civilization. Driven by desert lust and a passion for history, British scholars, subsidized by wealthy patrons, rebuilt some of the vanished greatness of Mesopotamia's past. The home of the Sumerian, Akkadian, Assyrian, Babylonian, and Arab civilizations, and the birthplace of writing, Baghdad had a substantial library in 1921, funded and supervised by the British. But this symbol of modern Iraq, which housed ancient books and codices, was set aflame by the Caliphate in December 2014. Days after the Central Library's ransacking, militants broke into the University of Mosul's library and made a bonfire out of 900 years of Arab science, philosophy, and literature. Students cried as they stared at the flames. Many Middle Eastern Muslims did not appreciate the European gifts of scholarship, law, and technology to the Arab world. European colonization transformed law in the Middle East in the 18th, 19th, and early 20th centuries. In areas under European colonization, many elements of Western law supplanted Sharia, or Islamic law. Western rule abolished many capital crimes, such as converting to Christianity, and it offered greater protections to women and girls. Other elements of Sharia were modified to eliminate amputations, crucifixions, and other practices considered excessively cruel. Western imposed modifications to Sharia created a backlash among the more conservative elements of both Sunni and Shia communities, and spurred nascent Islamic revivalism. This boosted the Islamic resurgence in Iran and the rise of the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt in the 21st century. Between 1920 and 1932, Britain sought to build a modern democratic state in Iraq from 3 former provinces of the Ottoman Empire that it had conquered and occupied during the First World War. Democracy did not take hold. Britain intervened in 1941 to remove the pro-Nazi Rashid Ali government. Iraq became very important during the Second World War. Rashid Ali would have availed the country's oil assets to the Axis. In the Second World War, Allied and Axis powers clashed over vital oil supplies in North Africa and the Middle East. They fought for control of Praetorian sea lanes and vied for the allegiance of Muslims in their areas of operations. Germany's 13th Mountain Division of the Waffen-SS, the Handschar, recruited Balkan Muslims, and the Mufti of Jerusalem, then living in Berlin, called them to jihad. These Muslims fought for Hitler, Ba'athism, Zarqawi, Baghdadi. After the Second World War, Britain and France reduced their colonial holdings in the Middle East. The United States and the Soviet Union vied for regional influence. The Ba'ath Party, which espoused pan-Arabism, socialism, and elements of Islam, was founded by 3 French-educated Syrian intellectuals. Michel Aflaq, the party's philosopher, like Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, wanted to abolish Arab nation-states and forge a single state. Ba'athist parties held power in Iraq and Syria in the 1960s. Parties' membership became a means of influencing the civil service. The autocratic regimes of Saddam Hussein in Iraq and the Assad clan in Syria made the Ba'athist philosophy and parties irrelevant in both states. But some of those who served as young men with the Ba'athists are fighting for the caliphate today. In Syria, the Assad family held dictatorial power and destroyed political rivals. It is ruled today by a dictator, Bashar al-Assad. In Iraq, Saddam Hussein could not bequeath his country to either of his sons because both had been killed in battle, while he was hanged by his compatriots. This left a power vacuum and opportunities for political bullies. Among the more ruthless contenders was Abu Musab al-Zarqawi, described by then U.S. Secretary of State Colin Powell as a collaborator of Osama bin Laden. Zarqawi was killed in 2006, and there was a temporary void in power. After a hiatus, an Islamic scholar now known as Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi proclaimed a new caliphate on June 29, 2014. He announced a grand strategy to build a complete Muslim society. Time magazine would later give him the moniker, the brooding muezzin of death. The borders associated with European treaties were, literally, bulldozed by the Islamic State. In 2014, the state released a video in which bulldozers leveled the Iraqi-Syrian border points. The clip, titled "The End of the Sykes-Picot Agreement," was posted on social media to symbolize the end of Western influence and the dawn of a new era, the reign of the Caliphate. This concludes a reading from Jihad and the West Black Flag over Babylon, written by Mark Selinsky, with a foreword by Sebastian Gorka. If you enjoyed this, please consider subscribing and pressing the like button. Nothing in this reading or any other reading in Jihad and the West represents the official position of any person or agency of the United States government. On behalf of Kensington Security Consulting, thank you for listening.